Around the year 1000, the Pueblo people in the high desert of what is now New Mexico built a house from river clay, sand, and straw. The walls were 2 feet thick. The total material cost in today's money was roughly $300. That building is still occupied more than 1,000 years later, maintained with nothing but the same clay by the people who live there. You cannot legally build this way in 48 states. The reason has nothing to do with safety. The material that outlasted every empire. Adobe has been the default construction method on every inhabited continent for 10,000 years. Jericho, the oldest permanent settlement ever excavated, was carbon dated to 8,000 years before Christ. The Great Mosque of Djenné in Mali has stood on the same site for 1,300 years. Taos Pueblo in New Mexico has been occupied without interruption since before the Spanish arrived. Mud brick towers in Yemen survived the Civil War in 2015. The concrete government buildings next to them did not. The physics behind it explains why a $300 wall outperforms a $30,000 HVAC system. The money trail explains why you are not allowed to build one. The engineering is almost insulting in its simplicity. 70 to 80% site clay, 15 to 25% sand, and 5 to 10% chopped straw. Mix it with water, press it into a wooden mold, pull the mold off after 24 hours, and leave the brick in the sun for 2 to 4 weeks. No kiln, no factory equipment. The energy input is functionally zero, about 2,000 British thermal units per brick compared to 30,000 British thermal units for a conventional fired brick. That is a 15-to-1 ratio before a single wall goes up. Compressive strength runs between 200 to 600 pounds per square inch depending on clay composition. The International Residential Code minimum for residential load-bearing walls is 175 pounds per square inch. Adobe exceeds that at most natural clay sites without any modification. The dirt under a property might already be structural grade building material sitting there for free, but the real engineering is not in the brick, it is in what happens after you stack them into a wall. An 18 to 24 inch thick adobe wall creates what engineers call thermal lag. It is a delay between when heat reaches the outside surface and when it reaches the inside. For adobe at standard residential thickness, that delay is 8 to 12 hours. When the outside temperature peaks at 2 in the afternoon, the wall is absorbing that heat and pulling it slowly inward. By midnight, when the outside temperature has dropped 40 or 50 degrees, the wall begins releasing that stored warmth into the interior. The house stays warm through the coldest hours on physics alone. No furnace, no electricity, nothing that can break down or wear out. The University of Arizona tested this in 2018. An adobe structure and a conventional wood frame structure were built side by side in identical desert conditions and monitored for 10 months. Outside temperatures ranged from 48 to 108 degrees Fahrenheit. The adobe structure maintained an average interior temperature of 76 degrees, with 40% less temperature variance than the wood frame control. The wood frame house required mechanical cooling for all 10 months. The adobe structure required cooling for none of those months. That study was published in a peer-reviewed journal and has been cited 47 times in academic literature. It has never been cited in a single ICCE code update proceeding. How it was written out. The shift away from adobe did not happen because someone found a better material. It happened because someone found a more profitable one. The first blow came in 1927 when the Pacific Coast Building Officials Conference published the first Uniform Building Code. It was written for wood frame construction and contained no provisions for adobe. Under American building law, that omission has a specific legal consequence. Anything not addressed by the code requires an alternate method approval, meaning engineering analysis, testing documentation, and formal sign-off from the local building department. The cost of that process runs $5,000 to $25,000 in engineering fees alone for a material that costs $300 in raw form. Then came the Federal Housing Administration. In 1949, the Federal Housing Administration required what it called conventional framing using dimension lumber for mortgage eligibility. Any home not built from lumber and concrete was ineligible for Federal Housing Administration backed insurance. Without insurance, no bank would issue a mortgage. Without a mortgage, no middle-class family could build in unconventional materials, no matter how cheap those materials were. Congress never voted on this ruling. Staff at the Federal Housing Administration drafted it in consultation with the housing industry and signed it into administrative law. The killing blow landed in 1970 when the Uniform Building Code finally added explicit provisions for adobe. On paper, this looked like progress. In practice, it was designed to eliminate the cost advantage. The new requirements mandated steel rebar every 24 inches, both vertically and horizontally, plus Portland cement stabilization at 3 to 5% by weight. For a material whose entire value is that it costs almost nothing, these mandated additions multiplied construction costs by 3 to 5 times. Drilling holes through each brick to thread rebar also destroys the thermal mass properties that make adobe work in the first place. Who wrote that chapter? The Portland Cement Association, the trade body representing cement manufacturers with combined U.S. revenue of $18 billion a year, drafted the requirement mandating Portland cement in every adobe wall in America. That is a matter of public legislative record. The woman who found the loophole. Hassan Fathi spent 50 years trying to tell the world that the solution to global housing poverty was sitting in the ground beneath people's feet. In 1945, he designed a village in Egypt using traditional adobe, barrel-vaulted ceilings, and natural ventilation. Total construction cost to residents was $0. The government canceled the project after 150 homes were built, because the contractors awarded the original concrete housing contract lobbied the housing ministry until it was terminated. The 150 homes Fathi built are still standing 76 years later. The concrete housing built in the same area has largely been demolished. Decades after his death, a woman named Simone Swan took his methods to the Texas-Mexico border and found the legal crack in the wall. The families in Presidio County earned $8,000 to $12,000 a year. They were priced out of every conventional housing option available. Swan's answer was a shovel and the knowledge of what to do with it. The method is the same one that built Jericho 10,000 years ago. Survey the ground, dig the clay, mix it with sand and straw, press it into wooden forms, then stack the bricks into 18-inch walls bonded with mud mortar. No rebar, no Portland cement. A finished home costs between $800 and $1,500 in materials. The energy bill after move-in is $0. Swan has repeated this process more than 600 times since 2008. 600 families who own their homes outright. 600 structures that will still be standing when the tract housing down the highway is landfill. The legal mechanism is the owner-builder exemption, a provision in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona allowing individuals to construct their own primary residence without meeting the full IRC standard. No contractor, no permit office, no bank. If you live in one of those 3 states, you can legally build your own adobe home. The material is already under your feet. A quarter of the world's population already lives in earthen structures. The United Nations estimates between 1.5 billion and 2 billion people currently live in adobe and rammed earth homes, not because they lack access to modern materials, but because for anyone without a $100,000 mortgage and a 20-year energy bill to look forward to, earth construction is the rational choice. Your grandfather could have built a house for $300. The material is still under your feet. The knowledge is still available. The only thing that ever stood between a family and a home that will outlast everything on their street was a building code written by the people who sell what that family does not need. If this is the kind of knowledge that matters to you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. The next video is on your screen right now.